We are recording. We are live. Full disclosure, been a long day. We have had some caffeine, but now it is cocktail and wine time. So this may be a little bit different from what you're used to. And if so, hopefully in a good way. And if it's a complete train wreck, may you never see it. Welcome back. We are here, Developreneur, trying to figure out what we're going to do this time around. I'm going to look at some ideas you threw out here because I was thinking they were pretty good. Something around self-imposed deadlines or when the project falls behind, how to recover. That's actually a really good one. We'll come back to that. Let's see the other one. Or it's okay to take a break when you're stuck on a problem and the problem will still be there. That's one we've done a bunch. So I think I like it, but we may come back to it.
How could we do that with business? We've done a lot from the other perspective. I thought of this from a business perspective.
And I think that's your next one. You said when to take a break. PTO is not just for employees.
Yes.
I think I like that one a lot because my company does not actually have PTO. We have an open PTO policy. You take it whenever you want, as much as you want. Initially, I did the standard, like when you start out, you get 2 weeks PTO, and then you get another week of sick leave and stuff like that. Now, part of it, this will be bonus material before we even get into it. Part of it was I had 2 employees. My primary employee, my senior employee that had been there a couple of years, was going through cancer treatments, and so I knew he was going to blow out sick and PTO. And didn't want to lose him. And so for many reasons, happened to be my son. So we'll just add that little piece. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to change the policy. And part of it was for myself, when I was the only employee, I was like, I'm never going to take that much PTO anyways, and I'm not going to pay it out. And there's just so much involved with it. I was like, you know what? Instead of worrying about tracking it, I'm just going to say we have an open policy and we'll just if you don't get your work done, we're going to have a discussion. And this has been, I think I'm a year and a half into this maybe, and it has not been abused. Now, granted, I'm still a small company. So if somebody gets hired once, I'm going to go work for them. I'm going to take PTO for 6 months. You will be fired and I will change my policy. But for right now, it's wide open. And it's worked, but I think that actually gets into the whole but you need to take PTO. I have talked to so many people in the past. I've been that person at some point. Now, early on, I got paid overtime. Once PTO was, you had 80 hours. With first place I worked, you had 80 hours. And then once you got another 80 hours of comp time, you got paid overtime, everything after that. So it was awesome. I was starting out and I was able to work my way into higher wages for 2 months. And then they canceled that whole policy, which really ticked me off, but I had a lot of PTO. And what I ended up doing, which most young people do, when I went to a new job, I basically got paid for my remaining PTO. Now, some people you don't get paid, so you get forced into it. But I think that's a really good conversation to have about that. So I don't want to get into spoiler alert with that. I think I do I want to tweak this first one, something around self-imposed deadlines or when the project falls behind and how to recover. I think I want to talk about setting deadlines. I think let's keep it broad like that and see where it goes, because there's a lot in that. There's some of the stuff I'm working with right now and in different projects and stuff like that and how those things work. So I think that we may actually be able to provide some insight into that. So
both of these ideas came from
so 6 fingers, 4 fingers, 2 fingers. This is going to be a fun one, folks. Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going to have a ride. Hello and welcome back. We are the Building Better Developers podcast. We are Building Better Developers. We are also Developreneur. I happen to be Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. This season, we're building better businesses. This episode is going to be, I'm just going to be upfront. This is not caffeinated. We're on the other side of the day, so this may be a little different. I apologize if this goes off the rails. I am going to give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. We're going to talk about setting deadlines. So this is going to be something that I don't think we've actually touched on too often. We've talked about project plans and stuff like that, but this is like the deadline. It's like this is the finish line, and defining that and sticking to it a little bit as well. So, little spoiler alert, that's where we're going to go. First, I want to also mention, because I'm me, I am also the founder of RB Consulting, where we are all about, honestly, we're all about you, whatever your company is. Our approach is we're going to sit down, we're going to talk to you, we're going to understand what your business is. We're going to figure out what is the recipe for success for you. This is not like some recipe you get off of Rachel Ray's 30-minute kind of stuff. This is specific for your business, because we have found that each business has its own secret sauce or special sauce, however you want to look at it. There are unique things that draw your customers to you. There are unique things that you do for your customers. Now, technology happens to be a huge investment for any business. And so what we do is we figure out your business, we talk to you, we understand, we learn, and then we take our experience with technology in the world that's out there, and we help you through integration, simplification, automation, innovation, whether it is buying something off the shelf, whether it's building a team, whether it's building custom software. We help you get there so that we can provide you a technology roadmap and plan that is good for today, 6 months from now, 6 years from now. We help you take that technology sprawl that everybody has to deal with and simplify it down into something we can put a nice little pretty bow on and hand over to you so that you can get the best ROI on what is, other than your employees, probably your biggest single investment. Good things, bad things. This is actually funny because in the green room before we stepped into the show, Michael and I had a long conversation, and it really is the ultimate of good thing, bad thing. This is actually also what's going to be in the newsletter, which I have not finished yet, but it will be out probably by the time this thing comes out. It is a busy season right now. We are blessed and cursed by having way more work and things than we have hours in a day. So the good news is, for me in particular, I have got a lot of work. It is meaningful. These are projects that are not just like throwaways and stuff like that. I've got some things that really matter to my customers. I'm very happy about that. And I've got a lot of them. The bad thing is that I have probably too many of them. And so I am getting up early and staying up late to make these things work. Now, I guess as a side note to that, bad news, I am too old to keep doing this stuff. So I'm going to adjust. The good news is that I'm going to be able to separate myself from some of these projects, to downsize myself essentially, and be able to stay sane while still providing the kind of quality that my customers, honestly, they expect, but more honestly, they deserve, and what I strive to give to them. And so this is one of those things that I think it is something we will probably at some point talk a little bit more about this in one of our episodes, is like the balance between, and we have talked about a little bit, like when you grow too much and you need to bring other people on. But there are some other factors that are involved there. It's like it has to do more with quality, which Michael loves to talk about. So I'm going to use that as a segue to toss it over to him and allow him to introduce himself. Michael, introduce yourself to the crowd.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Meloche. I'm also one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of a company called Envision QA, where over the years, I've spent many, many hours working on different projects, either be it in the trenches writing code, working on testing. And I've learned that if we build software or come at projects from a tester's point of view, we can build better, more refined software for our customers. So my company's focus is to work with small to mid-sized businesses to help you understand what the technology is that you're struggling with your business. If you need additional software, or if we need to throw that out or build something custom, we help you figure out how to make your software work for you and make your product a better solution for your customer. Good thing, bad thing. Bad thing, I'll start with bad thing. Bad thing is it's good and bad, but more bad at the moment. I have so much work to do to meet all the demands on me that I have not been able to spend as much time as I would like living life. And we've talked about this in other podcasts and other episodes. And stress and anxiety are a burden when it comes to being overworked or overextended in what you're trying to do. And I'm in that right now. With that being said, the good side of things, it warmed up today. We're kind of in that warm side of spring again, although this morning we were freaking 36 degrees again. By midday, we're back in the 70s. I hate Tennessee weather some days. Throw a rock, it can be one season every hour. Who knows? But the good thing is, I took a break this afternoon, walked the property. So I was worried because we kind of did have a weird winter that we lost a whole lot of trees. We've had a lot of bad weather lately. I just decided, let me just take a walk, walked around. It was sunny, it was warm, it was quiet. Well, sort of. The birds were going wild. We have lots of birds, very happy birds. We're down to 2 guineas from 4. It happens on large properties. Long story short, by the end of the walk, I sat down on our dock over our pond. I just sat there for about 10 minutes, just reset. It was such a nice day. I kept thinking to myself, okay, I need to go dig a line, run Wi-Fi out. Of course, I go back to work while I'm sitting there. But it was a great kind of reset to realize there is a purpose to what I'm doing. It's not all about work. So for those of you watching this, remember that, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not always a train. And we are doing this for a reason. Our lives matter. What we're doing matters. And that's the good to the bad.
Okay, Michael's going to go back to work now. I will say that was actually another good thing is that I was testing today. I don't know if you were, I think you were on the call because I was using Zoom on my phone. And I was like, I'm going to go sit out in the sun for a little bit and test whether I can use my iPad and my phone to do some basic work. Now, I will promote, even though we get nothing out of this, if you have one of the, and I don't know how far back this goes, if you have one of the more like the recent generations of iPad, there is a keyboard and protector combo with it that has a glide pad on it. It actually is a full keyboard plus glide pad, and it works pretty darn good, as they say around here in the South. I highly recommend it. I don't think it's cheap. I can't remember how much I paid because I got some of these things at once.
They're
I think
about
it's
$125.
I was going to say it's like 120 to $200 depending on what you get, but it's from a tactile point of view. It is actually a really good keyboard. Not my favorite keyboard I've had for an iPad. The one that I wrote the book on was much more like a tap. I like a harder, like a more resistant plastic kind of keyboard. This is a little more rubbery, but it actually is really good. The case in general is awesome. This will be one of those. Shoot me an email at info@developreneur.com if you want more information on it. I would be glad to share that with you because it's just really cool. I think we are literally approaching a point where technology is good enough that we really can go work like out on the dock at our pond and stuff like that. And these are some of the things that we need to do. But right now we need to get back to the topic because I don't want to squirrel away too
What's the topic, Rob?
What was the topic again? I want to talk about deadlines. And this is an interesting psychological kind of topic in a sense. And I'm going to start it by why I said it's psychological is I'm going to go back to a little story about a person in my past that was habitually late and happened to live in the same house that I did. And so what we did over time is I would sneak in and I would set all of the clocks 30 minutes ahead of schedule because this person happened to be 30 minutes late. Now, the problem is at one point, this person figured that out. And so I moved the clocks further ahead. And the next thing you know, people would visit our house and go, "Why are your clocks an hour and a half ahead of time? What is wrong with my watch?" It is like, "No, this is on purpose." And I would have to say, and it's probably giving it away. She would also say, "Yes, it's because we wait to the last minute sometimes as a family to get stuff done and to get on the road and to get to wherever we need to be." Now, I say this because there is obviously with a deadline, when we set a deadline, there is the we need to do this by this point factor of the deadline. It could be things like we have to get this done by this date so that the follow-up people that are going to, we have to get this product done by this date so that all of the people that build all the marketing stuff can get it done so that it can ship in time for Christmas or whatever it is. Things like that. There are also deadlines like we need to get this done because we need to beat a change in some sort of like government requirement or something like that. It may be something we need to get this done by a certain date because then that is the time that we've told everybody that we're going to get it done. There's a lot of reasons, and they may be very hard reasons or very soft reasons. And then there's also the psychological stuff of we need to set a deadline of Friday because we know that if we set it for Friday, we're not going to be able to get till Monday, and Monday is actually our deadline or something like that. We're always X days late. Or if we don't set this deadline urgently enough, everybody's going to dilly-dally. And then we're going to wait and everybody's going to study the night before the exam to get it done. Now, some of that actually is built into the Agile approach. Very much some of that is the Agile manifesto. If you look at some of it and the idea of delivering sooner rather than later, they don't say it, but it does sort of imply it and addresses the whole, I'm going to wait till the night before my project is due to actually get started on my project. And this, back when it was done, most projects were 12, 18, 24, 36-month projects. I mean, these were not small. These days, those are practically unheard of, at least when they start. I've been a part of a lot of projects that are like, we're going to get this done in 2 months. 24 months later, we're still working on it because people just didn't estimate right. So deadlines. I really do want to talk about more the psychological part of it. I want to go to how do you set a deadline based on, we'll call it the real deadline? Because these are some things that, honestly, every team is a little different. Every group is a little different. Every personnel is a little different. So for me, there are deadlines I can set for myself because I know who I am. I know what my propensities are and things like that. I know what I'm going to likely do. And so I know I need to get this done because if I don't, then this thing's going to come up and life's going to interfere and all of these other things. And I want to just give a couple of factors for setting a deadline. Now, one is, the first one is probably the hardest, is look at the actual deadline and then it's called contingency planning and backward scheduling. So if you have to have this done by January 1st, what are the tasks that are required in order for that to be done by January 1st? Now, usually when we're building software and we're providing a service or things like that, we're not done. When we get done, when something is code complete, there are other things that go on. It may be this thing some people have heard of. It's really rare. It's called testing. But there's also packaging. There's also deployments. There is training. There is user acceptance testing. There are a lot of factors that can go on. This may age me a little bit, or date me a little bit, but there was a day when people would build products and they would have boxes and manuals and things like that. But even now, if you're going to have a manual, even if it is not physical, but a digital manual, you have to provide time for that to be created, for that to be vetted, tested, validated, and things like that. Not Oblivion. Oblivion was like, wow, that was almost 15 years ago, 11, 11, 11. I will never forget that that was when it came out, right? Or was that Skyrim?
That
Oh,
was
that was Skyrim was 11, 11,
so
11.
for those of you listening, I did show a box copy of Oblivion. Sorry.
So Oblivion was actually before that. Wow. Oblivion was like '03 or something. That is literally like 20 years old. That is probably an antique that you just showed us, that you have the box for that, regardless of what a system. Okay, slight sidetrack. Okay, back to deadlines. What you need to do, and this is actually the most important exercise of setting a deadline, of setting your deadline versus the real deadline, is to go through the exercise of what is required to happen once I get, we'll put it in air quotes for you as a YouTube, you see it, the rest of you it's air quotes, what is done, what is code complete is usually the more complete, the like accurate term. When I go from code complete, what are the tasks that have to occur to go to this is done, complete, shipped, or something like that? Because I have found too often those steps are not taken into account. And what you end up doing, I'm going to give you from a visual point of view, is like if this is your deadline. So if you have it, go check us out on YouTube. This is your deadline. This is your fake deadline. This is your like assumed deadline. What happens is usually you're up here, but this space here is what is needed in order for you to actually get to complete. There's so many things, and this is why testing is tossed aside way too often, is because people get to the end of a very complex project that somebody, and I'm going to be like judgmental right now, some moron said it's going to take us 1 month to test this 18 months of coding, this million line of code product. They're going to be able to test it in a week. Not going to happen.
Only if you have the requirements you need.
That's a whole nother road.
All right, we're going to go way off script on
Yeah,
this.
we're getting a little off tonight. That's a problem. And I think that's the challenge. And that's really my focus in this, if there's nothing else, and this is a little bit of a hint, a spoiler to the challenge, is it's not as much about the deadline. It's as much about defining not only the requirements, but actually like fully defining the requirements. What are not only the requirements to build the product, but actually to ship the product, to deploy the product, to train the users, to actually get it in production. And now I'm going to let you like mull over that a little bit while I have a little sip of my drink, and Michael provides your thoughts on all this, because I know you're at the back end of that. You're the horse's rear that gets kicked all the time in the testing world. It's like, yeah, take that, you made 6 weeks of testing scripts. Can you get those done in a week? So that sets the table probably really nice for angry Michael to step up and talk about testing.
So you set the table really well for kind of defining the approach to setting deadlines. Now, Rob mentioned Agile. He also mentioned Waterfall. If you watch the pre-show, the big thing is when you are building software, there needs to be some idea of what it is you're going to build. But at the end of the day, you need to know what are you delivering. And somewhere between the beginning and the end, you need to lay out a roadmap of how you're going to build it, how you're going to reach those features from concept to completion. We all run into this. In fact, we're in the middle of a project right now that has kind of gone off the rails multiple times, but we're still moving forward. That is the beauty of Agile. However, there are benefits to Waterfall too, where you spend a little more time at the beginning flushing out all the requirements. You get all the requirements defined, you flush out all the tickets you need, and then you start working. Okay, from a new project perspective, Waterfall, spending a little more time at the beginning to do that may be a better start to the project for defining the deadlines, to defining the requirements, so you know when the deadline is actually achievable. For an existing project, you're already in it. You're in firefighting mode, or you're in the maintenance mode, or feature mode. So that's a totally different beast. So there you want to go through those cycles. You want to go through those sprints. You want to go through quickly, make changes, keep things moving, keep things forward, keeping features going out. So Rob mentioned testing, and that's my wheelhouse, or has been my wheelhouse for the last decade, but I'm still in all phases of development, which is where I struggle from a company perspective. Coming into a new project, I want to build the perspective up front, the test driven development approach. So we need to define or flesh out most of the user stories before we write code. There is a difference between user story and requirement. User story defines how the users are going to use the application. At the end of the day, that is what you need to deliver. Now, from the user story to the setting deadlines to the deliverable, that is the importance. If you can flesh that out, it could be more requirements, but if you can define all the user stories up front, you will be in a much better place to say, okay, we have 150 user stories. We know 80% of these are small features. They're very quick to knock out. But 20% of these could include like a data migration. Data migrations could be easy, they could be hard, or you could be dealing with a 30-year-old system that is so archaic and you are not sure what you're getting into. It could be nice, it could be bad, it could be the seventh layer of hell. Which unfortunately is where we find ourselves sometimes. So setting deadlines, and I digress, but setting deadlines is an art that isn't always perfect. You're going to get it right, you're going to get it wrong, and you're going to be so far out in left field that you might look for another career, but bear with it. It is not always perfect. You want to kind of stick with what is it, Permetto? Or not, that's the timing thing.
The word he's looking for is Pomodoro.
Yeah, but
Or are you thinking
the 80-20 rule? Who?
Oh,
Um, crap.
dang, you
Yeah,
just made me
we've had
lose
some
that
wine.
one.
No. But anyway, stick to the 80-20. Try to deliver 80% of the project. If you start out saying, okay, I'm going to set my deadline and I want to meet 80%, like meaning this is going to give us most of the features, you are setting yourself up for a better delivery. However, as you're doing that, you got to remember you have 20% left. So when you say, okay, we can get this 80% done, say in 6 months, you better be tacking on another 2 to 4 months after that for that 20%. That 20% could be 1 month, it could be 8 months. The reason I say this is there was a study done years ago with airlines. To improve customer satisfaction, all airlines had to do was increase the time of the flights to make sure that if there were any delays or any problems, the flight still made it on time. But 80% of the time, the flight is early. So they have padded the flight times to ensure that customer satisfaction is going to be high because they're always, or in most cases, going to be getting you to your destination before the time you need to be there. Now, there are always the situations where you don't meet that deadline. And if you don't meet that deadline, we've talked about this in the past, as you're going through the project, if you start seeing this going off the rails, make sure you communicate with your customer at every step of the way. Make sure you have weekly conversations. Make sure you have daily conversations if things are on fire. If things are not happy, you did a demo, they're not happy, make sure you include your customer as much as you can to ensure that, yes, we are addressing this, we are touching this, we are ensuring we are on the right path. So, setting deadlines isn't just about ensuring that hey, when I go into this contract or this proposal, this is when I'm going to get done. Also, you need to make sure that you meet that deadline or that you address any changes to the deadline as they occur through the whole process. What are your thoughts on that, Rob?
My first thought is Pareto principle. Pareto is the one you were thinking of, which is funny because it's always Pomodoro, but Pareto is the one that you now forgot.
That was the one I was
Cool.
trying to remember.
We progressed on. Wow, there's actually a lot there. The first one I think the first one I want to touch on, and we've actually touched on this before, not really from a software point of view, but from a consistency point of view, is when you communicate a deadline to your customer, that is the ultimate priority. And Michael nailed it. It is a little bit under promise and over deliver. But the neat thing, the magic that we have in software development is, and this is sometimes tough, and I'll talk about that, is that we can set our schedule. Usually a customer is going to say, how long will it take to get X done? Now, this is an interesting one because Michael and I have been through some of these a couple of times, is that we will say, whoever, developer says it will take, let's say, 10 weeks to get this done. And let's say, $10, dollar a week, 10 weeks. If you're doing $1, we need to talk. But the important point is sometimes a customer will say, well, what can I get in 8 weeks? And now sometimes the proper answer is nothing. We cannot do what needs to be done to get you a proper solution in less than the time that we just gave you. So sometimes you're going to need to stick to your guns. Now, the important thing in all of this is that we could also say, instead of 10 weeks, we could say 12 weeks. And we stick to our guns. And what we're doing is exactly what the airline did, is we're saying it's going to take 12 weeks, but we are going to be different from, I'll have to go back. I have a nice little infographic that's a few years old, but talks about how many software projects fail. Now, I don't know, honestly, I don't know industry-wide if those have grown or shrunk in the last few years. There's a part of me that thinks that they have failed more often in the last few years, but they're underreported because there's a lot of no code and things like that goes on that have very low expectations. And although they still fail to meet those low expectations, they're not considered a failure. So I think it is a huge benefit for us to set a deadline that is a communicated deadline that is actually further out than what we're going to do, because that allows us to under-promise and over-deliver. And if there is an industry that needs it, other than maybe lawyers and used car salesmen, we are right up there. And congressmen, politicians in general. Okay, I could be throwing shade all over the place. But we are living in the shade, so let's not go too crazy with that. Communicate it. And this is actually a critical thing, because I think we tend to be too afraid, anxious, scared, pick your word, of saying that, hey, we need to move the deadline. So if you get far enough into a project and you realize that the project's deadline that you communicated early on, whenever you did, is not going to be correct, sooner rather than later say, hey, I missed it. This is what came up. This is the changes that occurred, whatever it is. Because you don't want to just say, well, we're going to move it back 5 weeks, suck it up. Doesn't work well with most customers. Say, we're moving it back 5 weeks, and be honest. So if you miss something, if you're like, hey, we did not include this piece of your application that we realize is critical in our estimates, that will get you a lot further than you guys suck and you didn't tell us enough, or whatever it is. I don't know what your other excuses are, or just it's magic and the markets or whatever. Be honest with your communication, and that will take you a lot further. Michael has something to say.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with that too, because sometimes, depending upon your rate, if it's a fixed rate, you have to bite the bullet. You have to eat the cost if you're running late. Now, if you're hourly or if you're week to week, you even have to be careful with that because if you start going off, if you go longer than expected, they're not going to want to pay. So you may have to make a decision to complete the project. Hopefully, you're honest enough that you always want to make sure your customer first. But there are times, bad customers. But besides that, we always want to make sure we're providing the best detail or the best product to our customer. So if you do screw up, like Rob just mentioned, you may have to eat the cost. So keep that in mind. Sorry, Rob. Go.
I think
Go.
that, no, I think that's actually really important is that sometimes we screw up. It's our mistake. And we talked about this actually in a prior episode. There are points where it's like, okay, I made a mistake. I'm going to eat the cost. But there are also times where you made the mistake. You realize you thought that they were going to build a 1-story house and you realize they were actually building a 2-story house. That it's like, hey, I'm not going to make money maybe off of this error, but I can't afford to lose money on this error. It's like, look, this is legitimately, I thought we were building 1,000 square foot house. We're building a 3,000 square foot house. You are getting a higher value. Now, we'll talk about that in another episode. We've talked about it. We will talk about it again about like understanding the requirements. But your best friend, regular, constant, clear communication. And when you set a deadline, you should be very focused on that deadline. This actually goes back to the most simple ones that we've talked about is like if you start a blog or a podcast and you say, I'm going to do, let's say you have a podcast and you say, I'm going to produce a podcast every Friday. Come hell or high water, you need to make sure that you put one out every Friday. Now, you can look at us. We have 800 plus episodes, and there are maybe single-digit number of episodes that did not go out on time. Half of those were because of systemic errors and things like that. So we're not perfect, but we busted our little boohines many times to get that out because that's what is expected. And so you need to do the same thing. And so when you set a deadline, and this is other than, the one thing I want you to take out of this is what is it that is required to get from when you are done to actually put it into production with your customer. The other thing is making sure that you are realistic in what can you get done so you don't set a deadline that has you working, 20-hour days for weeks and weeks and weeks. And instead, you're actually doing something realistic. Now, it brings us to the challenge. And that is really the quintessential part of this is think about a current project that you're on, that you're working, or a service that you're providing. First, let's start with what is done as far as you're concerned. When do you consider your work complete? And then I want you to step into the shoes of your customer and say, what do they consider work complete? Because it may be as simple as you create a product, you drop it in the mail, and they receive it in the mail. However, there is something that goes on between like dropping it in the mail and they pick it up in the mail. And it may be much more complicated than that. Software delivery, I think we underestimate these days more than we even underestimate testing, and not from a amount of time that is needed, but more of we think it's just a snap and it's done, and it's not. And this is from somebody who has done package software, shrink wrap software, commercial, small end, all that kind of stuff. Is that I know that getting to a product that you can put on your machine and you can run and the customer loves it, but then getting it onto their machine that they can run and they love it, there is a time difference in that, and we need to be assured of it. And so the challenge I want to throw out is for you to think of your project, your product, your service. What are the steps, literally detailed? What are the steps that are required from when you are complete to when it actually the customer gets to enjoy it? And walk through those steps and think about that as you're setting deadlines. I think Michael has something to say, so I'm going to let him throw his little bonus onto this one.
Yeah, so I'm not going to wait for the bonus, but for this, if you're struggling to understand the challenge, Google the tree swing use case. And if you're Googling it, then click images and look for the software development image where you see a tree swing. It starts out with, hey, the customer wants this, but at the end, the customer really wants this. It's a tire swing. Try that. You will. That almost totally explains this whole episode.
It really does, because we have different aspects, but I think it really is we tend to simplify. We tend to say, yeah, I can knock that out. Especially as coders. I'm just going to like own it. And I could say it's just me, but it is literally every developer I've ever met. That is why project managers are told things like, when a developer tells you time, double it or triple it. And I do it for myself. I triple it. And I'm like, sometimes I'm still struggling through it. And I am not new. I have done this for a long time. And so I know developers it is not a science, it is an art. Just like crafting emails. Send us an email at info@developreneur.com. Leave us feedback, whether it's wherever you get your podcast, whether it's out on the Developreneur channel on YouTube, whether it is on we have forums, we have blogs, we have all kinds of stuff that you can leave feedback out on developreneur.com, out on X, we are at Developreneur, out on the Developreneur page, out on Facebook, for those boomers that are out there that actually use Facebook, like myself, even though I'm not a boomer. There is just, you name it, we are happy to hear from you. And whether it is a challenge you're working through, whether it is feedback or you like or you dislike an episode, we love to hear it, because we are here for you. We are here partially for us because we enjoy doing this, but part of the enjoyment is being able to help other developers get better, because when one developer gets better, we all get better. That's just like one of those little like kumbaya moments. Is that if you're a developer that I follow behind and you've gotten better, that means when I pick up your code 6 months later, I'm going to say far fewer cuss words when I'm looking through your code, and vice versa. That being said, it's time for us to get out there and, I don't know, write some code, create some projects, set some deadlines, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. I'm going to go like micro bonus, because we actually had a lot of bonus before this one. And I'm going to let you throw one in there, because I think I threw my bonuses out beforehand.
I even threw mine in the call. But some additional things to this. So when setting deadlines, write it out. Flowchart, brainstorm. Whiteboards are great. Post-it notes. Put it out. Put as much as you can on paper somewhere to make sure you have at least, okay, we need this here, we need to get here, and try to fill in the gaps in between. If you don't flesh out this roadmap idea, you're going to have a deadline that makes no sense. You're throwing out a number that is ridiculous. Now, with that being said, you could still do that and still be totally off. You could completely uncover something that nothing was talked about, wasn't undercovered. Until you get into a system, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So there's pros and cons to this. So the other thing I want to throw out as a bonus is, don't entirely beat yourself up too much if you did miss something that was there that was not talked about initially. Sometimes it takes multiple conversations to uncover what is under the covers versus what they do day to day. So you could have one company where, hey, this is what our software does, and then you try to replicate it and you find out, well, yes, from a user perspective, your software does this, but there is so much behind the scenes that our timeline just got blown out 6 months because to give you what you do every day, we have to make sure we build all this other stuff that no one knows about until you get under the covers. So I know I diverged on that, but when setting the deadlines, there will be times where you just don't know something or something is missed that will bite you in the ass, but don't let it break down your company. Don't let it break down your project. Take it, adjust, communicate, and be very clear with your customer if things go off the rails. Otherwise, if you don't, you're probably going to be fired. Your company might get blacklisted and you may quit. So, with that being said, there will be times where we make mistakes. We've talked about that. But in situations like this, when setting deadlines, there is always that unknown. And you can fret about it or you can just bite the bullet and go for it. But if you do set a deadline and there are unknowns, voice them up front, communicate them along the way, and always keep your customer in the loop. So if you find one of these, you communicate it, it's not a shock. Now, it may be a bit of a shock, but it won't be one of those where, oh, why the hell do I need why do I have to pay you $5,000 more dollars? What? No. Always communicate. Over communication can be bad, but it's good in this case. So, your thoughts, Rob?
I don't know if over communication is ever bad. It can be annoying, but I think it is always going to be taken with a grain of salt. So I think over communication is okay. I do want to say there's a lot. I could go a whole episode on that. So I want to go back to the requirements. My bonus, if you go back, I'm not a huge fan of project management tools, some of the tools in general. But one of the things that I did find that was very useful in the past, and it still exists, is Microsoft Project and similar tools where you basically line out the tasks and the time required, and then you can assign resources, and it just builds out a calendar for you. So you're assigning tasks and numbers, and then you get to the end, and it's like, boom, this is how long it takes. And I actually have, and this will be a bonus. Shoot me an email, info@developreneur.com. I have a spreadsheet, super simple spreadsheet. It goes back to, I think I've got it in Excel, and I've also got it in Office Libre or Open Office or one of those. And all it is really just listing out the tasks, like screens and stuff like that. Put an hour number to them. And then it's got a couple of bonus things like testing is always going to take X amount. And you can put your percentage, but like testing better take, an extra 10% or 15 or 20%. Project management, documentation, some things like that. And it's really, the value of this spreadsheet is not necessarily in all of the intelligence that I put into it. As much of it is, it really gives you a starting point to say, how do you approach projects? And it separates you in the estimation from the deadline, from the completion thought. Because that is what I think for myself, it has helped me estimate better. Because I do open up those things a little bit. I'm a little wider. I'm like, yeah, it's going to take me 4 hours to create that page instead of 2 and some stuff like that. And it adds up to a scary deadline sometimes, but that deadline is probably more realistic than something I do off the top of my head. So that's my bonus for this time. You want to throw something else in before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, so setting deadlines is scary. Meeting deadlines is even scarier. There is a science and trial and error to go from the beginning to the end. If your first project goes off the rails and is horribly bad, don't quit. Take that as a learning experience and try to reset expectations for your next project. Be it tack on 20% time to the next one, or just be more communicative through the project. It can be frustrating. This is setting deadlines. Deadlines in general are very anxiety driven things. There are reasons why we wait to the last minute to do things because we don't want to do it. We've talked about that before. I don't want to beat that horse deader than it is. But it's just one of those where this is a topic that touches a lot of different things and it affects people many different ways. Take what we say as a suggestion, run with it, try it. Every situation is different, but there is a core to how these projects go. So that's kind of my parting thoughts on that one, because really, if you listen to the whole podcast and you found that one thing touches something you've done, we've done our jobs. If not, well, go back and listen again because you missed something.
I just want to say, if you listen to this whole podcast, high five yourself. That is pretty darn impressive. So we set the bar a little bit low this time around, but that's okay. We're having a good time. We really do. If you don't realize it, this is where our hearts lie, is that we really want successful projects for ourselves and for you, for our industry, because like, this is how we do it. This is really the heart of building better developers, is setting expectations and actually exceeding them, not just meeting them, but exceeding them, because I believe in you. I believe in all of the people that are part of our projects, that we can exceed expectations. We just have to make sure that we're honest with ourselves and with our customers on what those are. And there are so many episodes we could talk about when it goes wrong and about all the other things. But this one, I want to focus on set proper expectations, set your deadlines, knock that thing out of the park, under promise, over deliver. That is it. That being said, we have gone a little long. We have got another one to do tonight. Mi Familia is just as a product thing. Mi Familia Flores, it's a golden tequila, just little rocks, a little bit of lemon juice. If you're underage, don't learn Spanish. The rest of you, if you know Spanish and my Spanish sucks, disculpe. Or some other, hopefully not too terribly offensive use of Spanish. Obviously, we've had enough right now. We're going to come back with another episode. We are not done with our season. Building better developers, building drunker developers in this case. Did you have a closing thought, and we'll wrap this one up?
Yeah, just remember Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Developreneur. You'll find us there, developreneur.com, info@developreneur.com. Check us out, leave us comments, and have a great night, guys.
This is awesome. I'm going to stop doing that and let Michael do it. You're seeing the handing of the torch right now. Have a good one, guys. We will talk to you next time around.